Well, the last day of the legislative session for Georgia's General Assembly is April the 4th. And among the bills that Republican lawmakers are trying to pass is Senate Bill 36, the Georgia Religious Freedom Restoration Act, which protects religious freedom. The ability, this is what religious freedom is, it's the ability to live your life according to your biblical beliefs. The legislation passed the state Senate along party lines earlier this month, but obstacles remain. Surprisingly, Georgia and North Carolina are the only two southern states that do not have religious freedom restoration acts in place. Well, joining me now to discuss this is the author of the bill, Georgia State Senator Ed Setzler. Senator, welcome to Washington Watch. Thanks so much for joining us.
Tony, great being with you this afternoon.
Now, you drafted this bill, according to what I understand, with the support of the governor's office. Can you tell us kind of what was behind this, other than the fact that Georgia is one of the few states, one of two only southern states that does not have such a law? What was the driving factor behind this?
Well, you know, Tony, for generations, judges in Georgia have been very kind to people of faith. You know, there's this sense that because there have not been these big explosions, these big problems around us, that everything's okay. What folks don't realize, though, is because of that, the legislature has never enacted by statute into law the basic religious protections that all citizens honestly think they have. I mean, the First Amendment of the United States Constitution was shown in 1997 to not apply to folks at the state level unless states enact state level religious protections. And that's what we're looking to do. Again, 39 states around the nation have done this or have these protections in place. And we can no longer assume that for the generations to come, judges will just give deference to folks of faith. We need to have these laws, we need to have these protections put firmly into law.
Well, Senator Setzler, you've seen that there in Georgia. I recall not too long ago, fire chief in Atlanta, Kelvin Cochran, who did a Bible study for his church, and he was fired because they didn't like the fact that it made reference to human sexuality and marriage between a man and a woman. I mean, would someone like that be protected under this law?
Well, you know, the Religious Freedom Restoration Act really focuses primarily on folks that come into contact with government. If you're a private employee, it wouldn't have quite as an impact, but there are circumstances. Again, in Chief Cochran's circumstance, he was an employee of the city of Atlanta. Other circumstances in which, you know, government's laws and policies trample on the rights of people of faith. The Religious Freedom Restoration Act is not an exemption, it's not a guarantee, but it does provide a very, very important balancing test that as judges weigh the duties of government against the religious rights of people, that the religious rights of people are given the due weight and emphasis that they deserve, that our founders intended for them to have. And candidly, most citizens already think they have, but when they get into the weeds and realize these protections are not in place, overwhelmingly citizens believe that the balancing test that RFRA provides is fair and can be applied broadly. And candidly, there's many blue states that have this. It's not only Georgia and others. It's something that's important to have, no matter what your background.
And I think it is important to point out that this is not a blank check to do whatever you want to do. It is simply protecting those fundamental First Amendment freedoms, as particular religious freedom. As you said, there's a federal RFRA Act, but the states have to have their own to protect from state action. So give us the status of this, Senator. Where does this bill stand in the process, and what's needed to get it across the line?
We were delighted that Governor Brian Kemp, worked with us as legislators, to craft a bill that matches the federal language. The same protections we have from the federal government need to be enacted by state legislatures to protect you from cities, counties, school boards, public universities. Governor Brian Kemp's team was very helpful. They drafted the language with us. That's the bill we passed through the Senate committee, passed the state Senate. And I have confidence the House is going to act on it and protect the integrity of Governor Brian Kemp's language. It's just in the process, there's some back and forth in making that happen, and we're right in the throes of getting those details right.
So I understand that there was a hearing last week in committee, I think in the House side, and there was some efforts to amend it. It hasn't advanced. So what's the next step, and how can our listeners and viewers in Georgia weigh in on this?
Well, first of all, I think they need to thank their legislators. We've got legislative leaders in the House that care about this issue. Sometimes as you're working through the details, in spite of having 16 powerful speakers on behalf of this from all faith backgrounds, from all ethnic backgrounds, people of color, people of all backgrounds and faiths came and spoke on behalf of this. Sometimes things get a little bit confused in committee. What I'm confident we will see, though, Tony, and what I think folks would encourage their legislators to do is don't get sidetracked by sort of deceptive good ideas. The Religious Freedom Restoration Act has 32 years of proven history. The bill we're passing or seeking to pass mirrors that language exactly. To not be distracted by any diversions, but let's stay with proven language that has the support of our governor, that has the support of our Senate, and I think our House leadership again is going to strongly support this. We've got to get the details right, and we're taking the time to do that. And I would like to thank leaders really at every level for being a part of that.
So the message would be for our viewers and listeners in Georgia to contact their representatives to thank them for supporting religious freedom, first off, but to support Senate Bill 36 as it passed the Senate, that they would adopt that same language in the House. Is that the message?
Yes, sir. Reach out to them kindly. This is not something to be ugly about. Reach out to them kindly and remind them that people of faith from all backgrounds will support them. This is being made controversial by the radical left. This is policy that supports everyone, and that people of faith will stand behind their elected officials if they take the right step and act wisely and boldly in passing the federal language that Governor Brian Kemp supports.
Right, and just to make a footnote here on that original federal language that passed in the 90s, that Chuck Schumer and the Democrats were a large part of this. This was a bipartisan bill. In fact, I think just a couple of votes against it back then. Religious freedom was not controversial. Before I let you go, Senator, House bill that the Republicans are trying to pass addresses the issue of biological males in female sports. The Senate has its version, Senate Bill 1. Can you give us a quick read on that?
Well, I think there's strong support in both chambers that biological males won't be able to compete in girls' sports, won't be able to be in girls' locker rooms at the high school and college level. The courage we've seen Riley Gaines show nationwide, over the last couple of years has been noteworthy to people. The circumstance in which Riley Gaines had to compete against males and stand 18 inches from a fully undressed male in a locker room actually happened here in Georgia at Georgia Tech during the NCAA championships back in 2023. It's not a theoretical issue to us. It's real.
Right.
It's something that people in Georgia, I think, across the spectrum can get behind.
Well, Senator, I thank you for joining us today. Appreciate your leadership on such important issues as religious freedom and the ability to live our lives according to our faith. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Tony, very much.